This is the Miller philosopher. One of the biggest questions for me has been, what was the point to Almaren at the beginning of the Silmarillion? Almaren was Middle-earth perfected, finally created after the primordial tumults with Melkor, whom kept destroying and corrupting everything that the Valar were trying to create according to the will of Uru Ilúvatar. And this primeval paradise that existed before time began was made up on a flat Middle-earth and a great sea with the island paradise of Almaren sitting smack dab in the center of it. To the north and the south of that creation stood the holy pillars of the lamps that provided light to that world. Now, according to some sources, this interpretation of Almaren was actually incorrect, in that the world at that time actually consisted of the far west continent of Aman, the western sea of Beligir, Middle-earth proper in the center, with the Great Lake and Almaren that I had previously mentioned before in the center of that continent, and then another great sea to the east called the East Sea, appropriately, and to the east of that, and its end, is the land of the sun. We all know what happens according to canon, that Almaren was destroyed and the rest of the world nearly along with it, but given what we know what happens later in the Second and Third Ages, where it's declared that humans are not meant to dwell in the land of immortals, then what was the point to Almaren in the first place, where no such division or segregation is declared? Did Melkor actually do the Valar a favor in destroying it, since there's no partition ever made for mortals and immortals at that point? What would have happened if Melkor had never intervened? Humans, arguably dwarves, and elves would have been dwelling in the same land at the same time, with no great sea or other dimension, so to speak, to separate them. According to the Athrobeth Finrod Andreth, Finrod sees a vision of what life will be like once Arda has been quote-unquote healed of Morgoth's influence, where mortals and immortals will coexist with the Valar. From this point, it could be argued that this is what Almaren would have been like. Arguably, the only real division between the Valar and the children of Ilúvatar would have been the Great Lake, and even then, it's not really stated as a wall or a barrier. If Almaren was part of the plans of Ilúvatar, then where is it, or at what point did Ilúvatar decide to change his mind that mortals and immortals should now be separate? And would Uru have separated the world like he did in the Second Age in order to make that happen? The mystery and complexities and the nuance of the idea of immortals and mortals inhabiting the same place at the same time has been an ongoing mystery throughout the First and Second Ages. And, according to real time, it's not ultimately resolved until the downfall of Numenor, in which the separation is finally made permanent and there's no other mention of it made of any kind of desire of one wanting to mix with the other. The only immortals that humans seem to be interested or care somewhat to acknowledge is that of the elves, and even then, they barely interact with them, as it were. The dwarves seem to have no mention of it whatsoever, despite having a religion revolving around Aule, but perhaps this is a question that will never be fully answered. Yet, it's a fascinating one to think about still, because of the fact that it plagued the stories of Middle-earth for so long. That, if the world had been unmarred, could mortals and immortals exist with the gods, rather than being separated from them? What do you think? Feel free to comment below, or if you have any information on this. But otherwise, this is the Miller Philosopher, and you have a good day.